All right, welcome back to our second episode, Inciting Incident. Tonight we're going to talk about Barbarian. We saw that movie yesterday in cinemas. We actually had a good time this time. The film was fucking amazing. And before we talk about it any longer, let me introduce my co-hosts, Alex.
Hello.
And Vili.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, fantastic. So, yeah, as I said, this was actually a very good film. Probably the best film we've seen for this podcast. Yeah, I fucking loved it. So, what do you guys think? Vili, do you wanna say something about it?
Yeah, so just before we continue, two things. Shout out to Luke for the music. Number two, obviously spoilers in this conversation. So if you haven't seen the film and you want to, probably best to stop it right now. It's still in cinemas. You can still catch it.
Yeah.
But I agree with Pedro. I really enjoyed this one. What about you, Alex?
I also enjoyed it quite a lot. The structure, the cinematography, and we will talk about it in more details a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
So what you guys rate this movie? How much
Just
will you
like
give it?
out of 10, I would give this one an 8. I said this as we were leaving the cinema, but I think an 8 is a good grade for this film. You know what I mean?
You, Vili?
I'll give it a 7.75.
Yeah, I think mine is 7.5.
So
Something
we
like
actually
that.
got a very good
Yeah.
type
No,
of
it's
rating.
very, we
Yeah.
all agree, almost exactly.
So we actually average out to 7.75.
Yeah, I deducted points for a couple of scenes and for sound.
Yeah, the
sound.
sound was a little bit weird.
Yeah, the cave scene, sound doesn't
Yeah.
travel like this in caves.
There's
No,
no
Alex
echo.
and I were talking about that. It was, no echo. It was isolated and stuff.
They
So
were
are
just
you-
in the room, basically.
Yeah.
It sounded like they were in a room, not in a cave.
So do you guys just go see Star Wars and say, I fucking loved it, but also there's no explosions in space, so I give it 2 stars?
No, bro,
but-
no. You're not thinking about it. So there are some things that kind of pulls you out of the experience.
Yeah.
That's one of them. And the other one that I'm gonna say is the scene with the film director or the guy who owns the place is driving in his fucking convertible. You can see his hair roughly in the wind. You hear no wind in the scene. He's not even shouting.
yeah.
He's speaking at a regular tone. So that kind of shit just makes me what the fuck is this?
That's very interesting, because we were just doing sound design in class, and I feel like if we'd done that yesterday, right before the film, I might have had a slightly different perspective on it. But for me, I didn't have any issues with the sound. I thought the film sounded absolutely perfect.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess you can be wrong this way.
I do think,
Yeah.
just on a technical level, it must be very difficult to mix a horror film, because every time you have a jump scare, you're forced to just crank it up and go
But
Yeah,
honestly, I don't think there was a lot of jump scares.
There was.
For me, it was only one, and it wasn't even a monster that scared
Yeah.
me. It was the guy.
Whoa, which one?
In the first half.
when he's crawling in
You
the
remember?
tunnel.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
In the end of the first half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't see
That's
Alex,
the only point I was like, whoa.
Yeah, you didn't see Alex jump up and hit his head on the ceiling.
Yeah, it was some Looney Tunes shit.
How would you rate this film on a level of scariness? Do you think it was a scary picture or not?
No.
I don't think it was that scary.
Would
yeah,
would you take your girlfriend to see this movie on a
Definitely.
level of scariness? Definitely.
Yeah.
But in a sadistic way, or in let's go on a cute date type of way?
No, cute date type thing. Because I think this film is a perfect... Wait, let me explain myself, guys. I think this film is
Alright.
a good combination of scary and funny. There were some very funny scenes in this film.
I agree.
Oh.
Everything involving the film guy, the guy who comes in the second half, was actually hilarious. His character wasn't, a good person, but he was very funny on screen.
Sorry, guys. I think my opinion will now be controversial, but the funniest thing for me was the scene at the bar when he was telling his friend the story.
You're right, that is controversial.
That is very controversial, Alex, and let's cut this part out of the podcast.
Yeah, we're not going to include this bit. Wait.
It was no.
No, we're joking. Yeah, go ahead, explain yourself.
The way he was saying that, I was like, because I understand that this is happening in real life. The guys who rape, they explain themselves like this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck?
I think it is a very accurate portrayal of people who are in denial about doing these horrible things.
Yeah,
You know
because
what I mean?
he was in denial through the whole film, and when he was saved, basically,
Yeah.
he was kind of in retribution for a short period of time, but by the end we saw that he was still a piece of shit.
Do you think this film has gotten a lot of really good reviews around the world? Do you think it's because of how they handle the character like that? Because I don't think I've seen, like, past the Me Too movement, I don't think I've seen a single one of these characters on screen portrayed in quite the sense where they, like, dare to sort of... So for anyone who hasn't seen the movie and is still listening to this podcast, this guy essentially has sexually harassed a colleague, how do you say that?
A colleague, yeah.
Yeah, a colleague on a workplace. And she has filed a report on him and he gets fired. His entire career essentially gets destroyed. And the film paints him as a sort of sympathetic character for like almost an hour. Just like puts him in these like really bad situations. You kind of feel for this guy, like, like I know you did a bad thing, but also it's kind of, and it's very risky. They do like come out on like the politically correct side at the end, but they do play with that ball quite a bit. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Honestly, I was believing him until the bar scene. I was thinking like maybe it's like misunderstanding or something like that,
Right.
which happens. But after the scene, I was like, nah, you're a piece of shit and you will die.
Here's the thing, like when they introduced that aspect of the film, I was thinking, you know, this guy definitely did it, but I didn't expect them to handle his character so well. I thought it was going to be less nuanced. I thought it would be a lot more, you know, just focusing on him being this giant piece of shit. But as Vili said, they kind of place him in a sympathetic position. They don't place him in a sympathetic position. I disagree with him being sympathetic from the start. I think once he's in the situation where he has to help our other protagonist escape the dungeon underneath the house, then he's a little bit more sympathetic. But until then, we can actually see him being a piece of shit. You know, he's talking to his friend, like he's calling him like, you know, the F slur and shit. He's
yeah.
He's like, what's up? And then he's not a nice guy, but he's put in the protagonist as a protagonist of the film. You know, we kind of have to root for him, even though we don't want to root for him, and that's kind of like rewarded at the end when, you know, he fucking dies. Like, it turns out he was a piece of shit throughout the film. We weren't actually like sympathizing with a rapist. We were just
going along for the ride, kind of.
Yeah, we were supporting the actions that he was taking in the moment, not necessarily his character.
And talking about, Vili, you wanted to say something about the character.
Go ahead.
Talking about the introduction of the character, the change in the mood, in the middle.
Moment.
Oh my god.
Excellent.
Should we
That's
just open that up for a little bit, again, for anyone who hasn't seen the film? I don't think it's going to be in theaters for a very long time, so it's, by the time you're listening to this, a good chance you haven't seen it. Maybe you popped it from Netflix or whatnot. But essentially, this film is like... so the premise of the film is that this woman rents an Airbnb from Detroit. She has a job interview, so she goes over there for the weekend. But when she arrives at the house, there's someone else already waiting for her there. And it appears to be a double booking. And from the beginning, you think that this film... like the guy who's already at the house is like a serial killer or something. I was absolutely convinced of that.
Yeah.
especially after the coincidence that he is the
The music person.
the music
so
thing, and then she was going to do a job in documentary about this thing.
Essentially, we get 40 minutes of one movie, and then it just cuts, and it's 40 minutes of a completely different movie. It moves all the way across the United States. We suddenly pick up in Los Angeles, and we're dealing with this actor, and he has to go back to Detroit.
Producer.
Yeah, he has to go back to Detroit to sell some houses so that he can fund his legal cases or whatnot. Very interesting. I didn't know what to make of that yesterday. I kind of have feelings about that now, but before I share that, I just wanted to ask.
No, dude, I 100% get it. I think me and Alex were talking about it after the film. The way that they did that was phenomenal because it kind of like instilled this fear, like, oh shit, what's happening to the girl? Like, what's happening to the other main character? We have all this time, because like the last thing we see from her is her kind of like getting abducted, or like getting in this very difficult situation, like she's trapped in the house. And then we cut to another character who's going to the house. So we have a lot of empty space between seeing her and the point that he enters the house again.
We have over 30 minutes, actually.
Yeah, for real.
That's
so like
crazy.
you see, it's the power of not showing, basically. Like, it lets our imagination run loose.
But it's also, it runs a huge gamble because you leave it on such a high point. Like, essentially, the first story ends with this woman discovering that it's not actually the man who's staying at the house who's her enemy. It's actually this like crazy monster that lives in the basement underneath the house. And then the monster attacks her, and it's like literally about to hit her. And you cut to black, and you go over there. You just really risk. I remember on Stranger Things a couple of seasons ago, they had that like climactic sort of like fight was about to begin, and then it's just a totally random episode in the middle. You like break your flow entirely. You've spent 40 minutes building this almost meticulous story. You're like, this is perfect, like wonderful. What the fuck is gonna happen? And then you just scrap all of that and you go somewhere else. I don't. Alex, what do you
I
think?
get what you're saying, but for example, I love first part because it keeps you in tension through the whole part, from the whole beginning when you think that this guy is the killer, basically, and you think that he's a killer till the very end of the first part. Because when he says to her like, let's go this way, I was like, now you're one to kill her or something like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect casting, by the way. Bill Skarsgård fucking looks creepy as hell already. So
I know, represent the Vikings, bro. Like all the Skarsgård.
kind of looks like you, bro.
Yeah.
I said it to you. His voice is kind of like similar to Bill's.
Yeah.
Bro, my girlfriend keeps saying the same thing. This guy's just like you. Actually, she said I look like the clown from It. I don't know if that qualifies.
God
because-
damn.
Anyway, it's good to feel represented. Tall white dudes in films. We go, you know.
But
let's get it, boys.
Yeah.
I said it to Pedro. I loved the transition. The 40 minutes that they showed about the girl, it was enough for me to care for her, and I was surprised for that, because I was like, they didn't like give us much about her. They just showed that she's like kind of nice,
But also,
good girl.
Do you not think, just sorry for interrupting, but like when you're writing a screenplay, it's usually your first act is the easiest thing. You just put your character in a place. 2A is quite easy, but when you get to like your midpoint, the middle of your story, essentially, you have kept people sitting at their chairs for 1 hour, and it's very difficult to keep them there for another hour. So you have to go ham. You have to like really exemplify everything, do everything faster, do everything better. We're all three of us, we've studied the theory of this. The scenes actually physically get shorter on the second half of the story, just so people feel like the story is moving somewhere. So I feel like it's kind of like cheating in a way to not do that and just say, I'm going to do something entirely else. And then at the end, you sort of get the illusion of, oh, they had a plan. But to me, it just feels like you were going in a very good direction. Why didn't you just continue? Why did you have to do this? I like the B story. It doesn't have to be there.
I see what you're saying. I don't think I agree 100%. I think this is one of those cases of cheating that is less like actually cheating and is more just being, well, I'd say like being kind
How
of
would
like
you say-
Creative, like outside the box.
Yeah, unorthodox. This is
Unorthodox, definitely. But how would you say it, like, do you think it really like somehow channels or exemplifies the themes of the film? Do you like look back on the film and say, this film would have only worked with 2 stories instead of 1 story?
I don't think so. But it doesn't, but like many movies work with just 1 story, but a second story makes it better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
I personally think we're living in a very like sort of limited. When people watch, I think, sorry about that. I personally believe, you know how people are binge watching Netflix now?
yeah.
I think people have the mentality to watch an episode and then watch a totally different episode, kind of like Black Mirror and shit like that. So they go to the movies and they can handle this. But I feel like in 2 years, you will not be able to do this anymore because people are going to come to the films, if they're still going to the films, to look for a cohesive story rather than 1 part and then 2 part. I think this has literally hit the absolute peak where a story like this is brilliant instead of lazy. But I do think
That's very interesting.
5 years before or 5 years after, and I think it would be viewed the same.
Yeah.
honestly, I kind of agree with you. My friend was doing his dissertation in Sussex
Right.
about kind of this thing that the cinematography is kind of trying to remake itself, and this is a good point that by using 2-part stories, basically, what happened, they cheated their way to the new generation, basically.
Yeah.
Because it's like 2 different episodes about 1 story.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
It's
It
kinda
does
like
feel
Black
like
Mirror.
2 episodes of the same like plot.
And
You know?
that's why I feel like it doesn't take it. Obviously, I'm not going to talk down on another filmmaker and say it doesn't take talent. Not getting any film made and getting it made as well as Barbarian was is very, very difficult. But also, I do not feel like you could call that like a film in the same
but
sense.
for example, maybe I'm wrong, but this is the first film that kind of did this kind
This
of
is the
thing,
first time I see
and
it as well.
and
yeah.
did it good. Maybe there is, but I haven't heard about them.
Yeah, a couple of films like that have been made. One that immediately comes to mind is, have you guys seen Waves?
Waves, no.
A very good movie. Structurally very similar. So it's two equal halves, and it's a story about this guy, and he's a professional wrestler. He's a college kid essentially, but he's like getting really into wrestling, and his girlfriend gets pregnant, and he breaks like one of his joints or something, so he can't wrestle anymore. Essentially, his entire life just falls apart. And then at the end of that, he kills her. And then the second half is his sister, who we've seen in one random scene at the first half, and it's like the impact of her brother being this known murderer has had on her. That's not a very good description of the film, but I remember watching that film. That's a very long film as well.
Wait,
it's like
is
220.
Is it? But from your description, I think this is more of an anthology than the same story.
Yeah, but that's
Because-
Is it an anthology?
no, it's not an anthology, and this is my point about Barbarian as well. That there's really nothing to justify that. Like if you're telling one story, tell one story.
Well, I don't know about that. I think, okay, look.
Wait.
Wait.
Would it be better for you if they do basically the crosscut? For example, showing her and his story, because it will be changing the mood.
Yeah.
They had his character because he needed to be in the end for the ending. Basically.
I was going to say, though, I think there is a legitimate thematic connection between his story and her story.
The juxtaposition, if you may say so.
Their story juxtaposes well.
There's big words on the
because-
podcast, but let's hear it.
Because he is a rapist. She is fighting the product of a rapist. So we haven't explained this yet, but the monster that they're stuck with is basically like a product of incest many times over, because I think it was like 50 years before the main story happened. There was a guy who owned the house, and he used to kidnap women, rape them, have children with them, rape the children, and keep going. So the guy's dying in the basement. He's like 90
that.
or something.
He's like
sorry.
100. He's old.
Yeah, he's like
Yeah.
old as hell. Really, really old. And you have this monster running around, which is basically somebody, who has been sexually assaulted. And yeah, like so many generations of sexually assault that you have like this kind of like incest monster. She's super strong, she's super big, super fast. And you having a woman having to, rely on a rapist to get rid of to surpass this product of rape does provide a thematic connection. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Doesn't make the story necessarily vital to her plot, but it does connect.
I just remember some movies that kind of did the Atlas, the Cloud Atlas.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Don't spoil
Yeah,
it. But
neither.
No. For real?
Shut up.
bro,
Alex.
it's 3 hours long, man. Like,
Yeah, I know, but there is like this also stories. They don't interconnect story-wise, but thematically, yes.
But the Cloud Atlas is also a hugely exceptional movie. I know the book, and I know it's from the people who made The Matrix. Like, what more can
Yeah.
you say?
Seriously?
It is from the people. It's the only movie that they made after The Matrix.
Oh,
honestly.
Anyway, just going back to
Barbarian.
yeah,
Back to Barbarian.
Back to what Pedro was saying about the theme, because I gotta say, I was searching for the theme when I was watching the movie, and at the final scene, what happens is there's like the rapist guy and the main lady. They manage to escape this monster, and they run on top of this, what do you call it, like a water tower.
Yeah.
And he realizes that he can save himself if he throws her down, and the monster is gonna jump after her and like try to protect her and whatnot. And he does that, and you realize he's a complete dick. But then at the end, the monster is still alive after the fall. The monster has effectively killed like the main lady, and then he takes the guy and chokes him to death, right? So it's a very complicated idea, but to, I guess, explain it in plain terms is she's like visibly a monster, like clearly a monster in the story, but also this monster who we as a society kind of perceive as a monster still has the capacity to sincerely care and sacrifice for this like real person. Whereas this dude who's like, would much rather, if you were in that cave, would you take the side of the monster, or would you take the side of the rapist dude?
Yeah.
But then what the film is in the end saying that the rapist dude is still worse, because the rapist dude, in the end, when it comes down to it, it doesn't have that sort of capacity.
That's a very good interpretation. Yeah.
I feel like it speaks to it because there's also a scene where she finally escapes from the basement and she runs to a couple of police officers, and the police officers don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I feel like that is the societal perspective of them saying like, yeah, we know there's like fucked up people over here, but they're like fucked up. We don't care. But then
to continue on your thought, the comparison continues from the police and the hobo guy, the homeless guy,
the homeless man. Yeah.
the homeless man who she at the beginning thought that is also crazy, who wants to kill her.
Yeah.
He was in the beginning.
yeah,
So also the comparison between cops and the homeless guy, showing that even though he looks like a bad guy, he may be good inside.
that's exactly true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a very, I feel like it's at the end, it feels like it goes deep, but it feels in the end to be a kind of surface level interpretation of that. It's literally just saying that even if people look bad, they're necessarily not bad.
Honestly,
and vice versa.
this is continuous. This theme started even with the house. Basically, you can see the houses run down, like damaged or broken, and the only house who looks pretty is shit inside.
Yeah. That's a great.
Yeah.
I believe that, just because it's a pretty simple message, it's a pretty simple interpretation, doesn't mean that it's necessarily surface level. The fact that we can draw these parallels between the presentation of the house and how it's actually rotten on the inside, and compare it directly to our other protagonist, our male protagonist, and how he is, on an appearance level, more sympathetic than the monster, but on the inside, he is far more disgusting than the monster is. The monster, quote unquote, is. Makes it a pretty well thought out premise. It doesn't make it like something that just kind of like surface, like just.
I think that extends even beyond that with them setting it in Detroit, which is like the de facto like shithole town in the United States right now, and everyone has like fully discarded that town, and yet there are people in there who are just real people and genuinely suffering and genuinely have something good in them, but we've just like fully left them out of the loop. I gotta say, I didn't like think of it. I thought of that on like a basic level when I saw the film yesterday night, but now that we're talking about it, especially with the house parallel, I'm starting to appreciate it a bit more. I might up my grade from 7.75 to 7.8.
We're gonna get into
honestly,
at the end of the podcast.
Maybe I connect in the dots that that doesn't exist, but the guy that in the beginning, the film tries to convince us that he is a murderer or serial killer or stalker, but he's not. By the end, we understand that. So basically, he's trying to show us that even though you think someone is something, don't assume and wait. Because, for example, we assume that the second protagonist of the second part is maybe good, maybe bad, but he's a piece of shit by the end. Yeah. Even though he looks like a normal guy.
So the theme of the film in a sentence is appearances can be deceiving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Damn.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Just if we had to briefly move on from the theme. Sorry, guys, by the way, about the wind. We have a window open over here. It's very stuffy in the room.
We can't figure out how to close it.
Yeah.
Vili said that it's stuffy, but he lied. We just can't figure out how to close it.
I'd just be lying, bro. Like, we're too weak for that. It's late. We're sorry. But anyway, just to move on from the theme a little bit and just talk about the aesthetics of the film, because I feel like it's very good for that sort of analysis. One thing that I picked up immediately is so there's three essentially stories that we watched through. We watched the main lady. We watched I don't want to call him rapist, bro. What's his name?
We can call him the filmmaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Filmmaker.
The actor. He's an actor.
Yeah. Is he an
No,
actor?
he's
I thought he
producer.
was the producer.
No,
he was producer.
He's an actor. Right?
He was producer.
Is he an actor?
I think he was producer.
He's an actor.
Because he said he was from the beginning of creating this.
No, he
pilot.
was attached. He's an actor because it said in the news article that he's an actor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, the whole movie I thought he was a producer.
Yeah, the
No,
actor.
he's actor.
Then the
Which is also feeds into the thematic parallel that he's very pretty on the outside. He's like an actor pretty, but then at the inside he's like the nastiest. Anyway.
The mask, basically, yeah.
Essentially, yeah. But I wanted to talk about just the actual technicalities of this film, because there's some very interesting choices with sound, as we tackled already, but also set design and most definitely cinematography.
Yeah.
The fact that we got 3 concurrent stories, or not concurrent, but 3 stories that we get to watch as the audience.
You didn't say the third. Yeah,
story?
say
The third story is the third story
of the guy, the owner of the house.
Yeah, so the original owner and presumably builder of the house who was killing all these people over there. And his point of view, it's a very wide lens. It's very inviting. And the hallway, when you look at the hallway in the house, so there's a main long hallway, and at the end of this is this like mysterious basement where all the nasty shit goes down. But when you look at it with the wide lens, it feels infinitely longer. And then with the lady, it almost looks normal. And with the actor guy, it's somewhere in the middle. Why do you guys think that is?
For the original owner of the house, I think most of the shots were kind of third person, like a game perspective. The camera was always behind him, like following,
Observing.
Yeah,
like
kind of detached from him.
kind of just Do you also like how he's the monster? Usually when you go on like a film and you're trying to really like sell that, when you're afraid of tiny places?
Claustrophobia.
Claustrophobia and that like the horror of it. You use a really like, you don't show much with the lens. You use a very tiny lens, right? But he's objectively the worst person in this entire film, and they use the widest lens. So you can see if there's a monster coming down the street, you can see it from 50 meters away.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
No, I was just going to ask, like, do you think that plays into the same thematic thing as well? Like, they're trying to sell him as our friend.
And also the other thing that I noticed, maybe it's me imagining, but I think we almost don't see his face through his shots. It's only most of the time it's just his back. And also other part is his like short story is the most colorful.
Yeah, it is true.
It's so vibrant. It's almost childlike in the colors. So
it looks like an ad. But I was gonna say, I have actually my interpretation of what you said about the different camera lenses. The wide camera can be used to, provide a sense of comfort, but it can also be used to provide a sense of disconnection. So it's not about tackling the issue of sexual assault. It's about tackling what is left of a system that is built on sexual assault. So you can see how the house can be a representation of the way that many industries operate. Sorry about the wind, guys. But the house can be seen as a metaphor for the way that many industries and many like societies operate, built on sexual assault, built on the oppression of women. And this sense of disconnection that you build with the camera is to signify how we are not trying to address the cause of it, is trying to signify how these people in the present day are dealing with the consequences of the system. Does that make sense?
So the world is sort of closing in on them, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. It's closing in on them as a consequence of what happened in the past. So we're disconnecting from the past. It's just how to address it in the present.
We're disconnecting from the past and how to address it in the present. I feel like I need to think about that a little more, but you might be onto something over there. It is definitely a purposeful choice because it's not only very difficult to use lenses like that, it's a very weird choice so it's set in a shitty neighborhood. And the budget of this movie is what, 5 million at the very
$5
top.
million. Yeah.
And for this one scene with the old serial killer, first of all they restore the entire neighborhood. All the houses are suddenly pretty. It's not Detroit anymore. It's like a utopian neighborhood essentially. And they use a white lens so they can't even like focus on him and cut out all the shit and do it in post and just like make it really nice and colory. They have to show everything. Everything is on the screen. So it's very clearly very intentional. I think he might be right about the reasons behind that. I'm not exactly sure, but
I wanted to talk about the story of the girl. The shots that they used, I think they used only the shots with her, the close-up of her movements. Every time she was closing the door, taking the chair, picking up like something, they was doing like very close of her motions. I don't know why, but I love that like little nuance to the film.
that's to sell the horror, I think, just purely. Because her point of view is very tight, and you look at the hallway when she comes out. So she wakes up at one point in the middle of the night, and her door is open, and it just feels like a monster is gonna run out. And they use that tight lens to kind of sell that.
Yeah, because the house is the same, but because of the lens, it kind of changed perspective.
I actually think the house is not the same.
You think it's a different house?
I think the house is physically longer because the house is simple enough to build. I think the hallway itself is probably 5 meters longer in the serial killer scenes.
Oh yeah,
That's a possibility.
yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah.
I think so. Just because remember that one scene where he goes to the basement? It feels like he's walking. Because when she's walking, she's like 10 steps, but he's walking forever, bro. Like he's just going there. It's like he's on a treadmill.
Yeah. No, for real. And I agree. I barely recognized the house. Like
Oh.
before they cut it to present time, I didn't know we were in the same house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Very strange.
No, the color was yellow. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was all yellow.
Though, there was one thing that I wanted to talk about, which is actually the homeless man. That guy was kind of weird.
What
Yeah,
do you
Not
mean?
not in just the sense of like the character was weird, but in the sense of like the way that they handled his character was weird. Because the first scene that he appears in, he is running at our female protagonist, screaming, "Come here, little girl!" But then it turns out that he just wanted to help her. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that doesn't really make sense, because the next time that he interacts with her, he's very like accommodating. He's very like, "You shouldn't be in there. You know, it's dangerous," and blah blah blah. So like I feel like if in terms of cheating, that's the moment that they like truly cheated.
I feel like if you listen to the filmmakers on a podcast like ours, they're probably going to say they tried to do that scene from her perspective
Yeah.
and try to make it more like scary and ominous.
I
So
see.
maybe he wasn't actually screaming like that. But I do agree with you. I think going back to what I was saying at the beginning, it feels like two unconnected stories, essentially. I think that's one of the things that they try to use to connect them closely together.
Right. Oh, okay, I see.
Which also why I didn't, because it just feels like a band-aid sort of. You have two A4 papers and you're sort of like taping them together like this, and you're like, yeah, this guy was in that story as well. So it's kind of like a MCU movie, like
Yeah.
fucking Loki's taking a dump on the background, bro.
God
Like,
damn.
no, okay, that was a bit rude, but
No comment.
no comment.
I don't
But-
stamp my name on this anymore.
Yeah. This is only Vili's
Yeah,
opinion.
welcome back to Vili's hour.
yeah, Vili's.
Vili's
Vili
hot
really
takes.
said Barbarian is like the MCU.
Damn.
Nah,
If we were doing the YouTube thing, should be the thumbnail.
Yeah.
Vili said Barbarian.
Barbarian MCU?
You?
question mark, question mark, question
Red
mark.
circle.
What the fuck? And a random arrow pointing at like a
Yeah.
chair. Who's missing? Bro.
All right,
Yeah.
let's bring it back to Barbarian.
Yeah, let's bring it back on topic.
The other thing is, I know that it didn't take you out from the film, but the light, I love that.
Yeah.
Honestly, how they lit every scene.
Mm.
But still, sometimes I saw that the source of light was very different from the cats. I was like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
the continuation is broken, but fortunately, because the story was good and was giving me everything that I wanted from the film, I was like, nah, I don't honestly care
Yeah.
about that.
How do you mean different?
For example, I think the scene in the basement, if I'm not mistaken, at first she was lit by like from the behind,
Yeah.
and in another shot she was lit from the front. I was like, no.
No, but that's that's something we study at university. You live for the shot. You don't live for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
scene.
yeah. Of course, and that's what I'm saying. Even though, because sometimes this kind of thing like takes me out from experience, like the sound in the cave or the sound in the car.
Right.
It takes you out a little bit from the story. But even though this thing happened, it was so good and fit for the shot. I was like, I don't care. I just noticed it because I watched too much movies.
Yeah.
And
Fair
like my eyes are like already trained to see like this kind of stuff. But it still was good. And also the interview scene. We didn't talk about that. I just wanted to mention the scene. Basically, if we so guys, we just edited our own like 2 minutes films.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I have so much respect for the music and sound and the interview scene. If you take out the music, it's just a normal scene. Like it will not be a horror. It will be a typical TV show shot or like everyday comedy. But because the music was so intense and gave you the suspense because something is going to happen when she will come back and something happens, the homeless guy is running at her.
Yeah.
You're like in tension through the whole scene of the interview.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I liked, and like the sound design is very
I
good.
agree. I think on a technical level, it's similar because we gave the same compliment to "Don't Worry, Darling" last week, but on a technical level, this film is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like it gets the camera work done right, lighting. We talked about how there are some disconnects, but it's fine.
Yeah,
Especially-
Sound design, I will agree. That kind of did take me out. but most of it is fine. You know what I mean?
Especially for the money. I was looking at it, and it's not far beyond. It's not like, even Don't Worry, Darling, they had a couple of shots, and you're just like, I wonder how they did that. Like, I wonder how they actually did that. But over here, it's quite like nice to watch a film like this and think, if we had that money, we could probably do that. Not that we necessarily have the story or the talent, but like, there's not a shot in this film that I could not figure out.
On a technical level, yeah, absolutely.
So it's very interesting. If anyone is interested in filmmaking, just a little bit interested in...
This is a masterclass.
No, this is not a masterclass, but I think the perspective... All right, so Barbarian is a really good film to look at for that reason and for the perspective that it does. Different lenses, wider lenses, tighter lenses, how it just totally changes the feeling, the mood of the entire thing.
I think, oh, like, let me qualify what I said. Like, it's a masterclass in storytelling through cinematography.
I agree with that 100%. Not necessarily storytelling through storytelling. sorry, Alex. I keep interrupting.
I just have a question for you guys. What do you think? How Monster was made? Was it CGI or prosthetics?
It's a person with prosthetics.
Prosthetics.
They don't have the money for CGI. That's the only reason why I'm saying. There's two shots where it is CGI. The one where it jumps down from the pole and the one where it flies through the window.
The one that it rips the people as well. Well, actually, no.
No.
No. The monster is real. Of course, the ripping of a person is CGI.
I think they ripped a person.
I think they actually killed 2 people.
I mean, it's fucking Detroit, bro. So.
Yeah.
Shot in Detroit.
Shout out to Detroit. New Hollywood, bro.
Second time you did that, dude.
Yeah, it's kind of bad because we were just talking about how like people are just unnecessarily shitting about Detroit, and it's a big thing that this film is like arguing against, and now we're here doing the same thing 20 minutes later. We suck.
We do this, not us.
You laughed, bro. You're complicit. You're still laughing.
Mike didn't catch that.
Yeah, I didn't hear it, dude.
Anyway, Monster, very interesting monster. Have you guys seen Bone Tomahawk?
No, I haven't.
No.
You got to watch that. Similar monster. I'm not going to spoil. Have you guys seen, for everyone listening to the podcast as well, if you've seen Barbarian and you want to see something very similar, have you seen, what is it? So it's a British film. It was made for $5 million as well. And it's about 5 women and they go cave diving. Like they find caves and go into it.
Is it The Descent?
The Descent, yes.
Yo, I keep hearing great things about it.
That film is amazing. So essentially they descend like 500 meters into like the earth or whatnot and they get stuck. And there's people are cannibals, like they've evolved over a couple of generations. They feed on dead animals that fall into the ravine. They're blind. They move on 4 legs. It's crazy. The monster, I feel like, is very much inspired by that. At the very least, I dare to sort of speculate that the people who made this film watched The Descent and said, all right, that's something that we can do. Let's try to do something similar. Mm-hmm. Watch that film. Very good.
Yeah, no, I will.
How do you rate the monster? 1 out of 10.
I think the monster... I think the monster might be one of the best things about this film. Like, the film is so good. Wait. The film is so good that, like, you kind of, like, don't really think about the monster as, like, an isolated being. You put it in the context of the story. But when you isolate the monster, it is actually kind of, like, a very different approach to a monster like that. It's not just, like, a fucking slasher villain that just wants to kill. No. This monster has, like, maternal instinct because of its situation. You know what I mean? Like, it's constantly rewatching this tape of a mother, like, breastfeeding its baby. So it's not actually trying to kill the people that get stuck in the basement. It's trying to treat it as its baby. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Like, nurture them the best that she sort of can.
Yeah.
I also like how the final twist is the monster is not really the monster. It's the dude who's the monster, the actor guy.
With this, I agree. If you're saying from this perspective, I agree with you that thematically and philosophically, basically, this is a great monster, of course. But I liked the movie more before the monster appeared on the screen. Basically.
I agree.
Yeah, me too. When I thought Bill Skarsgård, I thought I was getting that representation, bro, and we're just always get killed at the midpoint.
Killed too quickly.
And you were recommending films that is kind of similar to this one, and Don't Breathe.
Don't Breathe is very interesting.
Yeah,
Also
it's kind of similar.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
It's not. I feel like this one, Don't Breathe, is like objectively just horror, whereas this is kind of psychological horror. Because you don't think
story-wise, story-wise, guys trying to impregnate women to have a children and this kind of thing.
What?
I
Does
see that
happen?
connection.
Does
but
that happen?
Yeah, in Don't
in
Breathe.
Barbarian,
No.
not really.
In Don't Breathe, but it's like if Don't Breathe would continue, if the main villain continued to do the same
No,
thing
but he's a
in
Vietnam
Don't Breathe.
veteran in Don't Breathe.
Yeah, but he steals girls, lock them in a basement, impregnate them.
No, that
he doesn't
doesn't happen.
steal girls.
No.
The girl that he kidnaps killed his
Yeah.
pregnant daughter or some shit. So like, you owe me a granddaughter.
We can resolve this outside of the podcast.
Yeah,
Anyone who's
let's
listening,
save
we
this
can
for
talk.
the
but,
next.
I'll just say I have very different memories from Don't Breathe.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
One
Okay.
thing that was... sorry, do you want to go first?
No, you go.
One thing that Pedro actually mentioned as we were walking out of the cinema was that this reminded him of Parasite, which I 100% agree on. Do you want to elaborate
No, this
on
is
that?
like Parasite, but horror. You have the people coming from underneath the house to, grab food and shit and just live down there. But here you have a monster living underneath. And obviously the themes aren't very similar in terms of, society being built on sexual assault. But there is a sort of thematic similarity when it comes to oppression. Parasite is all about oppression of the working class, while this is all about the oppression of women. And the fact that they both chose to portray it inside of a house in a very similar setting, as in coming from beneath the house, like it's a, like it's a monster that we kind of hide and we push away, did kind of like bring in that
That's
that
right.
comparison to my head.
I think just the final question that we should answer on this podcast is: there's a lot of films, a lot of horror films, especially where something weird is coming out of the basement. There's Parasite. There's Get Out, obviously, which is probably the number one that comes to mind for me. Alex, why do you think that is?
Obviously, because everything is good from the outside perspective, and people hide their shit behind the masks or in literal basements. And this is just portrayal of today's society and in general, and people personally. For example, you hide something in your mental basement, and you hide it from the world. But sometimes someone will find it.
Do you read anything into Barbarian actually having two basements? He has a basement, and then he has a basement inside the basement. That's like the cave. Do you think there's like a logic for those levels, or is it just...
Honestly, I wasn't thinking about that, and I don't think... Maybe I have to think about that because, yeah.
I think it is, because you go down one level, and it's quite a long time that we only go down one level, and you think this is it. Whereas in Parasite, you go straight to the bottom, and there's nothing more. Over here, you find the dungeon of the serial killer, and you're like, something has clearly happened over here. And after that, it's like 20 minutes, and they find the second basement.
I think you're onto something because, yeah, you basically, when you find out the room with the bucket and the bed, you think, yeah, that's it. This is the mystery. This is the final mystery. And after that, you find something more fucked up, something more
and also just like
strange and cruel,
deeper and darker. And because it's very weird, like what you're essentially telling your audience at that point is that our girl is being imprisoned by a literal serial killer who likely kills his victims and like films that and probably sells it on the online. You can't really go much worse than that, but yet they do. And I feel like the long staircase when they descend into is really exemplifies the themes as well. That like you think that's it, but you got to go really, really, really deep, and then there's something more
to
in
get
there.
to the root of the issue.
Yeah,
I think this theme that you just said portrays how each of the main characters goes down the stairs. Because remember, the girl goes down the stairs.
That's very good.
Being afraid of that with the flashlight. She cannot go there. She screams. She goes there to help someone. When our second guy, he goes there to measure his property because he thinks this is his property and he can sell his house for more money. He don't fear anything because he's so fucked up. He's not getting into him. So how deep he goes.
I was gonna say, sorry to interrupt, but I was gonna say even Bill Skarsgård's character went down there only to prove her wrong. He went down, no, there isn't anything.
Not
and
necessarily. I feel like Bill
Skarsgård,
Skarsgård, he was just a naive person. I feel like he just sincerely believed that he was safe and he was like doing his job as a good guy, essentially. But I would take that even further and say the homeless dude knows about the basement and he doesn't go there because he knows how ugly it is.
Yeah.
Like, he could call the cops on the serial killer's basement, but he knows that what lies underneath that is so much more uglier that it doesn't do any good to call the cops on it. This problem is far beyond that.
Damn.
Yeah.
I think, Pedro, do you want to wrap us up?
I think before we wrap up, there's just one little scene we need to talk about. And that is the breastfeeding scene.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so just for anyone listening, there is a breastfeeding scene, but we're actually not going to bring that shit into the podcast.
Especially the
That's for
hair
the
on the
after hours.
bottle.
No,
Yeah.
no. So this film is, despite all the like beauty and whatever structural magnificity,
magnificence.
yeah, it's kind of fucking gross as well.
Yeah.
Like
There are,
really
the
fucking
film
gross.
does indulge in some quite visually disgusting scenes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not R-rated for nothing.
But still, watch it, stream it.
Highly recommend.
Yeah.
Highly recommend watching it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a solid 7.85.
It's a solid 8 in my
Honestly, after talking with you guys right now and like trying to unveil all the themes that gone through this movie, I think I will give it like an 8.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we wrap up?
All
with
right.
it?
Yeah.
All right. So thank you very much for tuning in to our second episode. I hope you enjoyed this one. And next week we will watch something else. So please tune back in. And yeah, thank you very much, guys. Love you. See you next time.
Bye.
See you. Bye bye.